Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my first Destiny video on my channel. You guys probably know if you follow me on social media that I am a fan of Destiny. I've played a lot of Destiny 1, I play Destiny 2, and I am a fan of the lore, the story. It's just that for me, prior to this comic, I don't really feel that the story's been presented in the best way. Like, the lore I think is good, but it takes so much like research to really get to anything basically. Whereas the story in the games is almost so basic that there's not even a lot to analyze, because it's just fairly simple stories. Your Guardian, as like the character you make yourself, kind of has most of the action revolve around them. And so the big characters of the lore just kind of feel like side characters in your story. So it kind of feels a bit weird. This, to me, feels like something they should have done ages ago. I'm shocked that this is like the first kind of like extended universe, in a way, like Destiny stuff that we've got. But I really like this first issue. I think it's really, really well done. And it's why I'm doing a video on it. And hopefully as they release the other issues, I'll do a video on those as well. Because I do want to start, some sort of Destiny content, and I think reviewing the kind of media stuff that comes out, the stories, is kind of a good way to go. And then if these turn out to be popular, of course I can do more Destiny stuff if you guys want. But anyway, this is the first Destiny comic, issue 1 of Fall of Osiris. Yeah, this obviously is to coincide with the release of Destiny 2's first expansion, Curse of Osiris. And this is very much needed. Osiris's role in the actual game is good, but it's quite small. He doesn't feel like the important character that he is from like the lore, the Grimoire cards from Destiny 1. So I think this comic was absolutely needed to give the character the backstory that he needed to make it more available to the people who aren't going to sift through all these Grimoire cards to find a few quotes from him, basically. So this was a pretty big thing to see happen. So yeah, Bungie are releasing these for free on their website. It doesn't seem like they're even going to get a physical release, at least right now. I assume they might release collections once more issues are out, but we'll see how that goes. So the obviously, if you want to read this comic yourself, link is in the description to it. I'm not gonna like read through the entire thing. I'm just gonna show you, most of it. We're gonna have a quick read through, and I'll give my thoughts and analysis as we go on. As I said, link in the description, but for now we'll move into it. So, really nice cover with Osiris on the front, and also his ghost Sagira, who's a really cool kind of character as a ghost. That was a big positive from the actual gameplay stuff from Curse of Osiris. But yeah, we also get this credits page, which I have open here, full size. So yeah, I like this kind of couple of paragraph just description of the world, with that, like, if you're really just into Destiny for the gameplay and are not exactly sure about like what the real story, what exactly is going on here, I think this does a good job at explaining it, of just like the Traveler coming in, giving humans light, creating guardians thanks to like ghosts, resurrecting kind of dead humans in a way, and so on. The whole idea of the power coming from light, which relates to the Traveler, the darkness being the enemy, and the whole setup of the last city, and the guardians being the beacon for hope. And then here the setup for this story directly is that Osiris, the most notorious warlock and leader of the Vanguard, the Traveler, is a herald of doom. So he has this kind of counter viewpoint to the Traveler, who everyone else sees as the thing that saved humanity. He sees it as the kind of problem maker. So we have the writers here, Ryan North and Christine Thompson. Ryan North is like a comic writer, and then I think Christine Thompson is the one of the main lore writers in Destiny. Artist is Z Carlos. I really like the art, so this is pretty cool. And then there's a lot of the other stuff as well. So yeah, back to the story itself. So we jump straight in, and the story is told from Ikora's perspective. So she's kind of narrating it and telling basically what we're getting here is the story, of course, the fall of Osiris, the story of Osiris's banishment, which we know about to some degree from the Grimoire cards, but this is obviously telling some more specific details. because obviously the situation in the game right now is that the current makeup of the Vanguard is Zavala is the overall commander of the Vanguard, as well as being the Titan mentor. Cade 6 is the Hunter mentor, and then Ikora is the Warlock mentor. Whereas here, as we see, it's a very different lineup, but we'll get to that when we get to it. So the big thing just to know here is that Ikora is Osiris's student, and that's where their connection comes from. So yeah, we'll just quickly move on to the key important bits. So you see them here. You know, my story begins and ends as it always has with him. He was the best of us, the strongest, the wisest, and we banished him for it. So that's the kind of core of the story. They're kind of giving you, in a way, the end of the series already. But the story is about how we get to his banishment. What he, as the current Vanguard commander, does to lose so much trust and get banished for what he does. And then we get the whole idea that Osiris is a bit obsessed with the Vex, very, very obsessed with them. And he says here, you know, the Vex are a unique threat, Ikora. There's at least a chance that the other races will tire. There's a chance that they'll die. The Vex won't do either. And he says, you know, like, not forever. Forever is linear. We must oppose them for longer than forever. And that's kind of the way he thinks, and that speaks to obviously the Vex and the whole idea of them being able to control time to a degree, and that being a big aspect of kind of what they are. Plus just the kind of knowledge that, like, the Vex aren't the robots. The Vex is actually the kind of radiolorian fluid, the kind of Vex milk, as they call it. That's what the Vex, the actual like species in a way, actually is. The robots are just kind of robotic bodies for them. But anyway, I was his best student, but soon I wasn't his only one. And this is one of those aspects of, like, he develops this kind of cult following behind him, whereas Ikora is honestly his student. But we begin to find out that Osiris isn't necessarily like an amazing teacher as such. He's not actually like particularly suited to be a teacher, just the way he goes on. So it makes sense where the followers that he develops are more just looking up to him with hero worship, whereas Ikora was able to be a good student with him because, as we know from her kind of backstory, grimoire kind of entries, she is kind of a prodigy as a guardian. Like, she in the Crucible is like this legendary character who's kind of more recently kind of calmed down as she's become the Vanguard mentor, but like there's like legends of like her going crazy in the Crucible with the invective shotgun and stuff like that. So it's really kind of fun to see stuff like this happen. You see Sagira speaking as well, and that he has contentious messages. And the Traveler's death was a gift. So like he's saying all these things that like Guardians shouldn't really be saying. Like the source of Guardian's light, he's saying, is like this problem. And he's, you know, what do you see? And they're like, you know, a weird space sphere, kind of weathered but still cool, a solid 8 out of 10. And Ikora, of course, gives us, I think, the standard, in a way, Guardian answer of just the one who created us, and the ghost gave us our power. And then Osiris has a pretty solid, I think, counterpoint. That's true, but it's also the one that brought these threats to our shore, that in activating humans as guardians, it's also prompted the attacks of, like, you've given this species power. Of course, other species want to come in and kind of attack that. And, you know, the first mover, and for the Vex, you know, that's the threat we now face. He blames the Traveler for the death of so many people. And that's just who he is. The whole idea of there's this following that's developed, that like he's one of the few people who's willing to speak out against what the others see as like too many secrets with regards to the Traveler. And this obviously speaks to the main kind of conflict here being between Osiris and the Speaker. The Speaker obviously being the overall kind of leader of the city, in a way, the leader of the consensus, which is like the kind of political makeup of the city. And he is called the Speaker because he like speaks for the Traveler. And the big thing, the context that's very important for this story is, of course, what we learn from the main Destiny 2 story, which is that the Speaker dies, of course, in the opening Destiny 2 story. But one of the things he reveals to Gaul just before he dies is that, you know, I said I speak for the traveler, but I never said it spoke to me. So he basically reveals that in a way he was making it up. He was just this kind of religious leader, kind of creating this kind of cult in a way as well around it. And Osiris has always been one to try and kind of counter that. But he doesn't like the kind of fanaticism, the celebrity stuff that's kind of forming around him. He's not concerned with name recognition. Nice picture here of just, you know, showing the closeness between the two, that they are actually good friends, student and mentor. But we move into one of Osiris's other friends here with the arrival of Saint 14, who's another very important, like, legendary guardian character. And he's very interesting for a bunch of reasons. One, because there's a quest that you can get in the Curse of Osiris once you get 5 of the Forge weapons, which I haven't got yet, but I think I know the gist of the story, but I don't think it's important to say right now. The idea, though, just with Saint 14 is that the reason he's missing, we know Osiris is kind of missing from most of the Destiny story because he was banished. Saint 14 is missing in part because he actually went to search for Osiris. So their story is linked because they're friends. And just for anyone aware, Saint 14 is an exo. That's why he has the kind of -14 at the end of his name. Because the idea is that I think the common interpretation is that the 14, the number on exos like Cade 6, is that is the number of times that exo's mind has been, like, reset, because they of course are kind of robots basically. So of course Saint 14 is a Titan, and we set up the whole idea of, like, Titans, they're quite physical, so Osiris expects some property damage here, and he arrives right down. And it's really cool, you know. Saint 14 is agreeable to see you again. You know, I heard you now call your ship the Grey Pigeon, and his reasoning for this is that pigeons are the only birds left in the city, Osiris. I see them and I remember what we're fighting to protect, which is a pretty cool perspective. It's a very Titan perspective on things, where they focus very much on just the, in a way, military protection of the city. Build the walls, protect what we have left, and that's what they're all about. Whereas hunters like to explore, and then warlocks kind of like to explore in the sense of like figuring things out. That's the kind of core of what they kind of always explain of the different classes. Something we should both be fighting for. And this is a really interesting point here of what Saint 14 says. Father is concerned too. If you've read any of the lore entries about Saint 14, you know that he refers to the speaker as father. That's how kind of close their connection is. So even though Osiris and Saint 14 are friends, Saint 14 actually kind of believes in what the speaker is saying in a way. So it's very interesting, and he kind of basically challenges Osiris to a fight, and it's such an interesting one because they're both such legendary characters. You're kind of like, wait, who's gonna win this fight? Because, like, here's like the legendary defender Titan versus the, like, seemingly most powerful warlock in all of existence, and it's pretty cool. You know, they have a little combat here of just Osiris attacks, Saint 14 blocks pretty epically here, and then he actually seems to get the advantage in their little scuffle. I don't know if he does a full Fist of Havoc there, but, like, he really does a pretty good attack there. And you know, it's just the argument of, like, in this case, this is kind of Saint 14 in a way, like, acting as like a proxy in a way for the speaker, showing the dispute between Osiris and the speaker, because Saint 14 believes in the speaker. You know, talking about the Vex, and just Saint 14 urging Osiris to, you know, not go down this path of really trying to force the issue of, like, questioning so much about the Traveler. But of course, it's obviously revealed later on that Osiris is indeed correct about this, that the Vex are a massive threat and they need to be dealt with, and the whole stuff about the Traveler is true to a degree. But here we go. Here's the current vanguard at this point in the story. As I said, very different than what we know. But Lord Saladin at this point, I think, is the Titan mentor. We see that Andal Brask here is the hunter mentor. Osiris, of course, is the vanguard commander and warlock mentor. I think we know from the grimoire at some point that Saint 14 at some point is also the Titan mentor. I don't know if this happens after this or before this. That's what I'm not particularly clear on. But we know that Cade 6, which Andal mentions here, is the mentor that comes, of course, after Andal Brask. I believe maybe I'm mixing this up with the Night Stalker character from that story, but I think there's something along the lines of, I think it's Andal who is killed by that kind of Kel character in one of the strike missions, and that's why in that mission, I think from the Taken King, it's why Cade is so kind of eager in that mission to make sure that you as the Guardian take out that specific character, because it's sort of for revenge. But either way, it's cool to see these specific groups of characters here. Just see these legendary characters interacting, like Saladin and Saint 14 talking there. And even though they don't really say anything to each other, it's just a fun thing to see. So K6 has eyes on the Kell of Kings, which I think, is that the character that Saint 14 headbutts to death? I think it might be. But I'm not really sure. This is where, like, I wouldn't at all consider myself a lore kind of absolute expert. I know a good amount, more than a lot of people, but not anywhere near the levels of some of the big, Destiny lore YouTubers. But anyway, so we get the speaker coming in and making his kind of big debut, and you see him dismissing Ikora Rey here, which I think just speaks to the fact of, like, he's so involved in the kind of structure that he's created. He doesn't really care that Ikora is she's very capable. Like, she definitely can act for Osiris, and he just completely dismisses her and just wants to speak to Osiris because he's the Vanguard commander. He's the one that is in the kind of position of power. And what is it here? We get a mention here to the Jensum scribes. I think Asher Mir from Destiny 2 is one of them. But we see that already. Like, Ikora is effectively kind of taking up the position of Warlock Mentor, because Osiris isn't really involving himself in these kind of Vanguard meetings anymore. And this is, I suppose, part of why his banishment, while it speaks to, I suppose, a bad direction for the city, was probably the right thing to do in the end, because they needed an active Warlock kind of commander. Do you believe the city can be defended without the commander of the Vanguards, without the Warlocks? And this is Ikora, in a way, stepping up, which is really good characterization for her. You see Saint 14 here, and he says, and Saint 14 was right, in the end Osiris never abandoned us. We abandoned him before he ever got the chance, because we know that Osiris, in his kind of absence, was doing everything he could to stop the Vex kind of manipulating with all their simulations from actually making one of them kind of reality. What else do we get here? So yes, she goes to Sagira, of course, for help, because Osiris's ghost is obviously the one closest to him, full stop. And we just get the idea that Sagira really notes how, like, creepy the speaker is, which he is, and that, like, he comes across as a pretty nice character in, like, the first big cutscene of Destiny 1, but the lack of information, that he doesn't tell you anything about the Traveler, is, like, definitely a weird thing. And just his death coming with all these kind of weird aspects to it, of just like, whoa, like, you've been lying to everyone this entire time. It's definitely an interesting thing to talk about. And we get here, of course, the speaker is the leader of the consensus, and it doesn't make him a god. So obviously Sagira agreeing with Osiris that it's right in a way to oppose the speaker, because he's not focused on kind of what they should be. So people are worried. The speaker has been teaching that Osiris is obsessed, dangerous. The speaker claims that his followers are being led to their destruction. You're his ghost. He doesn't hear me anymore. And she's fairly dismissive of this, but she tries to relay it, I suppose, in the end. But where's the next, I suppose, important bit of the story? We both knew that if Osiris didn't stop his research, sooner or later it wouldn't matter what he discovered. Okay, so we have a kind of preacher kind of going on here. And again, the kind of cult following of Osiris, kind of we see that happening here. More of the hero worship happening that he doesn't really appreciate. Great one, you know. What else we have here? Perhaps you should speak to them, Osiris. Encourage them to find their own truths. And this obviously speaks to like part of the big reveal, I suppose, in a way, as part of Curse of Osiris. It's just that like Brother Vance actually has never met Osiris, and he's just a big fan of Osiris. And the whole setup of like there's all this legendary cult following that knows everything about Osiris. They like took some of his teachings and kind of like expanded them themselves, and kind of just went off everything he said, rather than really doing the thing Osiris would actually want them to do, which is like, okay, I've kind of opened your mind to thinking in a certain way. Now you take that approach and, you know, try and find the truth of something else, rather than just going back and over the same things over and over again that like I agree with. Yeah, and she just knows that like anything you write will be treated as holy text. And it's research, not religion. And it's just the whole idea of her basically saying that like you, in not dealing with them and telling them to stop it, is kind of creating more of this kind of hero worship around you. Whereas if you told them that like a key part of if you want to be like me is to not do what you're doing, it's kind of hard to explain, but I think it works really well. It's just this kind of complex, weird kind of celebrity kind of culture around him. I'll choose my words carefully, my student, I promise you. Once the fruits of my research are available to read without distortion, the followers and the speaker alike will stand out. They'll see that what I speak of the future, it's data-driven predictions, not some prophecy. And of course, we see that the followers are kind of talking about it in terms of prophecies, whereas Osiris, in a way, like thinks like the Vex. He talks about like timelines, permutation, and simulations, that sort of thing. Not necessarily like prophecies and these kind of books that are being left behind. And you really begin to see the whole idea of that, like Osiris obviously has problems, and that like it would make sense for them to probably elect a different person to be the Vanguard commander sooner rather than later, because he's not really fulfilling his duty. But it's not him who's necessarily trying to make it this really widespread thing that like follow these prophecies instead of the speaker's prophecies. He disagrees with the speaker, but he's kind of much on his own, and he doesn't really have any involvement with the people who are, you know, in this case, like selling his prophecies like this. And we see that everyone's kind of jumping to kind of get on them. The prophecies of Osiris: learn the future, know the traveler's true purpose, prepare for the darkness. And Saint 14 and the speaker are there, and we see that something bad is about to happen. And of course the speaker says, collect them all, burn every copy, I will not have this heresy infecting my city. And it's a really dark kind of villainous thing of like, he's just pointing out like these kind of things of like, we don't know much about what's going on with the traveler, and here's someone questioning things a bit, and him asking them to be burned completely. Now, we sort of know already how this kind of comes to an end, and that I think the reason we know about prophecies of Osiris in the first place is because Ikora actually keeps a copy of it. So she already has kept a copy of this book, so she has gone against the speaker is going to be, I suppose, a plot point at some point in the book. But for sure, you know, this leading to good development for the speaker. I suppose we're going to get more Osiris, more Ikora going forward. Saint 14, I suppose they'll have to involve quite heavily in the story. I was very, very impressed with this comic. I felt it managed to, I think, introduce and touch on some of the more major parts of the lore, and kind of bring them out into the open a bit more, while also kind of expanding on stuff itself. I did really like that it feels like this is a story that has stuff for the people who are really into the lore, but it also works on a level of like people who aren't particularly familiar with the lore, of just, I finished Curse of Osiris, I don't feel like I knew Osiris that well, read this comic and you sort of know him already. And then if you know the lore, you have all the extra stuff with Osiris as well. And that's why I think this comic works so well, in that it works on that basic level of just, it's a kind of basic intro to Osiris, but then there's also these hints at so much more. So I really, really like this, and I'm very excited for issue 2. So I obviously, as I said, will be reviewing issue 2 once it comes out. But in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this video. Are you into Destiny? How did you find this video? Do you want me to do more Destiny content going forward, or what? I definitely want some feedback on this one to see if there's any interest in me doing a little bit more Destiny content. But yeah, that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.